Hi, I'm Matt Shepard. Coming up on this edition of Shep Shower and Shave, why the Tigers had to make a deal and how we as Tiger fans should feel about it. That's coming up on this edition of Shep Shower and Shave. We're brought to you by Fifth Avenue. Always a premier destination, Royal Oak, with over 36 cold beers on tap. Great food, great drink specials, a kitchen that is open until 2 a.m. Folks, they've got 40 HD TVs, a 14-foot HD projection screen, a one-of-a-kind sportsbook viewing area, and I'm telling you, they got a summer patio that is really good for Thursday nights when we go out there and talk to some Lions, but especially if you want to go watch the Tigers. The Lions preseason is right around the corner. Red Wings and Pistons, Michigan and Michigan State not far behind as well. We're also brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Big HVAC companies in the area. If you ask them where should you go to get trained, to get certified, they'll tell you Northwestern Tech because HVAC is all they teach. They've perfected their hands-on program over the last 38 years. You can call them at 248-358-4006. You're going to get trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. You can go to their website. Here it is, northwesterntech.edu. We're also brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. You can see his work on Instagram and Facebook. Nate Noth does our logo of Shep Shower and Shave. Chad Shepard's on assignment. He'll be back with us later in the week. We all know what the big story is. The big story is the Tigers making a deal, trading their closer, Justin Wilson, under team control for the next couple of years, and soon-to-be free agent catcher Alex Avila to the Chicago Cubs. In exchange, they get two high prospects, Jeimer Candelario, who's a third baseman, first baseman, and Isaac Paredes, who is a third baseman, shortstop. One's 23, Candelario, and he's had a brief stint with Chicago Cubs, but it's primarily at AAA Iowa. And Paredes, who's 18 years young. Immediately, Candelario becomes Detroit's third best prospect. Now, I don't know what you think that means because you're not high on Detroit's prospect system anyway, and I understand why. But I would tell you this. Detroit has gone from one top 100 prospect in this baseball season to four top 100 prospects. Detroit's top 100s are Matt Manning, Alex Faedo, who is their first-round draft pick out of Florida, Candelario, and Bo Burrows. All of those guys are top 100s. Now, that doesn't mean much to you right now, and it doesn't mean a whole lot to me either because they're just prospects. That's all we know. But here's what we do know. We know that this system has been void of young talent for a long time. Whether you think it's poor drafting or getting rid of a lot of that high-end talent for proven talent because the window was open for the Tigers. How many times have you and I talked in the past about you've got to go for it? You've got to win now. Who knows how long this opportunity may be around for you. So get rid of this guy and get rid of that guy and live for the moment. That's what a lot of teams are doing right now. The Cubs in particular. The Dodgers in particular, although the Dodgers are doing it better than anybody else, of living for the moment now and holding on to their long-term prospects as well. I mean, we know what L.A. has said. L.A.'s told anybody who will listen, I know you'd like to make a deal. We're not getting rid of Walker Buehler. He's their number one prospect left anyway, 13th overall by MLB Pipeline. We're going to hold on to Alex Verdugo. He's an outfielder, and he's a top 30 Major League Baseball prospect. We're not going to part our ways because we look toward the future as well here with Zadier Alvarez. Those guys are all top 50 prospects. And the Dodgers have basically told anybody who's going to listen, as much as we would like to get your top player, Sonny Gray, Justin Verlander, Alex Wilson, Yu Darvish, we're not getting rid of those guys because those guys are allowing us to be who we are right now with Corey Seager and Cody Bellinger, right? So we know that the Dodgers were going to stand firm. It was up to Avila to go out and find the best deal. Candelario, as I mentioned, third right now in Detroit's prospect pipeline. He was ranked 92nd overall. Paredes comes in and assumes the number 8 spot. So here's your top 10 in the Tigers system based on MLB pipeline. Matt Manning, who's at Connecticut. Alex Faedo, who's not pitching this year because he pitched enough for Florida. Candelario. Bo Burrows, who I saw at Erie a couple of weeks ago and has electric stuff. Christian Stewart, who's his teammate there with the Seawolves and has over 20 homers and over 60 RBIs. Kyle Funkhauser, Joe Jimenez, who was called up with Joe Hicks because Avila and Wilson were sent packing. Paredes came over in the Cubs deal. Michael Gerber, the Gold Glove winning center fielder at Double-A, and Derek Hill, who as a first-round pick has been very disappointing so far. I know a lot of people are looking at what about Doel Lugo, because he was brought over in the J.D. Martinez deal. Well, Lugo drops to number 14, again, a middle infielder. Here's what Detroit has had problems with. And I get that Dave Dombrowski has spent, and now Al Avila as well, they've spent time and time again on drafting pitchers in the first round. And it's not always, by the way, it's not always, hey, here you go, we're going to draft a pitcher every single year in the first round, and that's what determines whether or not we've got a good-looking draft overall. Because, quite honestly, after Alex Faedo, they went with Ronaldo Rivera. He's an outfielder from Chipola College. Then they went with a catcher, Joey Morgan, out of Washington, before they went back in to getting a pitcher, and then another catcher out of high school. But you know the track record. You know how Dave Dombrowski has decided, and now Al Avila too, decided that, we're going with pitchers because pitchers are valuable commodities. They are. I mean, you can turn them around and you can trade them. So it was Faedo this year. It was Matt Manning last year. It was Bo Burrows in 2015. It was Jonathan Crawford in 2013. It was Chance Ruffin in 2010. It was Jacob Turner in 2009. Ryan Perry in 2008. We can go on and on and on. Rick Porcello, Andrew Miller, Justin Verlander, Kyle Sleeth, you name it. They've been Kenny Ball. They've really done yeoman's work on taking power pitchers in the first round. Because a lot of times you can then spin that around if you've got enough of them to bring in some what they feel is position players. Well, because of that, though, and because you haven't been able to really turn them around but get major league talent for them, or they just haven't worked out, Ryan Perry, what they've done is they've been void of positional talent. And now they have to replenish that. They have to replenish the positional talent. Because guess what, folks? It's not happening with Toledo. I mean, look at the age of the Toledo Mud Hens. If you go there and you look at their roster, I don't know how many of you gone out there and seen them, but there's no names on that infield list or outfield list that make you go, I can't wait to see this guy. I mean, Brendan Ryan's the shortstop. Omar Infante's the second baseman. There is really nobody else from an infield standpoint. Outfielding-wise, you've already seen Jacoby Jones. You've seen Matt Den Decker, for crying out loud. You've seen Tyler Collins. It's not happening, okay? Those guys are not going to be here. So you need to replenish Double-A and Triple-A and make sure you're getting some guys that down the road are going to help you in case you have to trade Nick Castellanos or move him to first base, in case you trade Jose Iglesias, in case Ian Kinsler, you buy out for $5 million next year, or next year's his last year. Who's the next second baseman? Now, Dixon Machado's been better than I thought he would be, but Dixon Machado is part of this group too. So you got Lugo and you got Candelario, and now you got Paredes coming up a little bit later on. You got Jose King coming up a little bit later on. And you've got some youth. You've got some guys who can move around. And don't get caught up in that, well, Candelario's only been a third baseman. He's going to play third base for Toledo, yes. But he can play first base as well. I mean, Lugo can play short or third base. King can play either middle infield position. He's got a really good arm and good glove. So you've got some guys that you've had to replenish. And I understand that. And look, social media last night was hating on the Tigers. Why are they hating on the Tigers? Why are they hating on these moves? I'll tell you why. Because it's the word trust. You don't trust Avila. You don't know a thing about Heimer Candelario. You don't. I mean, admit it. You can't. Not many of you, anyway, are can go out there and have a really good conversation about Candelario or Paredes right today. And I'm not saying I can't either. But here's what I know about these guys, and then we'll get into the Avila and the trust thing. Teams are ranked up to an 80, or prospects are ranked up to 80 on the scale, and whether or not they've got good stuff. If they're at 60 or above, they're baseball ready, all right? Candelario, he's got a hit power index scouting grade of 55. That means he's on that verge. He's got an arm of 55. He's got an overall grade of 55, all right? He's 23 years old. The problem with him is where he was drafted, or the team that took him, the Cubs, because he's blocked by Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant's not going anywhere. He's an all-star. He's an MVP candidate. He's blocked by Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo's not going anywhere. He's an MVP all-star candidate on a regular basis. Candelario is, this according to Baseball America, talented offensive player who could have started for several clubs at the start of 2017. He's a switch hitter with a fluid stroke from both sides of the plate, makes consistent, hard contact, and draws a healthy amount of walks. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. I just described, think about what I just said. I'm going to give you a generic definition of a player, and then you tell me if you'd like him within your system. Talented offensive player, could start for just about anybody, but he's blocked by 2 all-stars. A switch-hitting, fluid stroke, third baseman / first baseman who makes consistent hard contact and draws walks. Finds the gaps. Most of his power in the form of doubles. What do we always say about Comerica Park? We're not built for the ballpark. We've got too many home run hitters. Upton, J.D. Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez. They're plotters. Nick Castellanos. This dude at 6'1", 210 finds the gaps. Okay? Doesn't have great speed or quickness, but he finds the gaps. All right? The belief in him is he's got great instincts, and he works his ass off. How good is that? Would you like that? Absolutely. So now he comes to Detroit. He's got to contend with Miguel Cabrera at first, Nick Castellanos at third. Here's the difference. Cabrera is a year away from becoming a designated hitter. You know it and I know it. You think he should be a DH right now, and so do I. But Victor Martinez has taken his place at the DH spot. Have you seen Nick Castellanos play third base this year? And I mean, been able to dig deep and watch him play third base. Do you see his hands? Do you take note of whether or not this guy can play defense the way you expect a major league player to play defense? Good. In other words, you're on board with me in saying he's got terrible hands. I mean, they're like rocks, all right? There's a reason he's made 15 errors. The most at his position in the big leagues. The most that he's ever made. His fielding percentage, and I know this can be very subjective, I suppose, because sometimes we don't always trust the official scorer, is .935. Think about that for a minute. .935. He's got a defensive WAR of -7. That's how bad Nick Castellanos has been at third base. Do you really want him at third base? And I mean this. Don't kid yourself. There's a reason Brad Ausmus goes with Andrew Romine every single time in the latter innings, because he can play. Out of the regular playing 21 third baseman, Nick Castellanos, by far and away the worst defensive player at his position. By far and away. Alex Bregman is a second-year guy at Houston. He's made 7 errors. That's it. 7 errors in 219 chances. Nick Castellanos only has, 10 more chances, 12 more chances. and he's doubled the number of errors. So you could see him making that move, right? Who's the gold standard at third base? The gold standard used to be Evan Longoria. He only has 7 errors, by the way, in 20-plus more chances than Nick Castellanos. Okay, you don't expect him to be that. Fair enough. How about Nolan Arenado? 4 errors in 280 chances. 280 chances. You remember former Tiger Gino Suarez. He's now playing third base for Cincinnati, all right? He's got 262 chances, so almost 40 more than Nick Castellanos. He's made 6 errors. That's it. Mike Moustakas, really good player. He's made 6 errors. Nick Castellanos is not a good fielder, period. He's in the lineup for one reason and one reason only, because he can hit. He squares the ball up, that's fine. So you're going to have to make a change there anyway. You know it and I know it. Hopefully it comes next year, but Victor Martinez is blocking this entire issue because they've got another year left on that contract, which is just absolutely brutal. So unless you want to buy him out, which I doubt is going to happen, he'll stay, he'll be the DH, and you'll have to deal with the corner infielders another year. So you and I both know this has been in the making. If there were anybody worth a damn within the system who could play the position better than Nick Castellanos, he'd probably be up here. Unfortunately, there isn't. So that's the reason you've got to get as many guys as you can. You need infielders. You probably need some outfielders too. Christian Stewart, Michael Gerber, Derek Hill, just a few of the outfielders that the team is going to be eventually relying on. Stewart, Jacoby Jones as well, put his name in there. Stewart closer than anybody else, probably. I know Jacoby Jones is in AAA. I know he started with the ball club this year. He had a really good spring training. Stewart's defense isn't great, but he can hit with power, and he can hit. He's a better hitter than Jacoby Jones is. Michael Gerber's got pretty good speed, not great speed. He's not Ron LaFleur. He's not Gary Pettis, okay? But he really fields the position well. Gets good jumps on the ball. He'll steal a few bases for you, but he's no Vince Coleman or Willie Wilson. All right, so don't expect that when he gets here, if he gets here. And he's 25, by the way. These guys are still relatively young. That's the beauty of it. Candelaria is 23, and as I mentioned, Paredes is 18. But let me get back to what I was talking about before with Al Avila. It's the trust factor. You feel like he failed you in signing Mike Pelfrey, and he did. You feel like he failed you in signing Mark Lowe, and he did. I mean, he turned it around and said, this ain't working. I'm getting rid of both those guys, which is a good decision. But overall, signing them in the first place, you didn't agree with. How you didn't agree with Mark Lowe, I don't know. Pelfrey, I wasn't big on either. Lowe, I thought was a good signing. He had a really good year for Seattle before he came to Detroit. He just couldn't get outs in Detroit, so it didn't work. You didn't like the Jordan Zimmerman signing. Neither did I. That's blown up in his face. Now, you didn't like the Alex Avila signing either, and look at what they were able to do with that. So he's proven you wrong there. But you're thinking, yeah, but that batting average for a GM ain't very good. I get it. Justin Wilson, pretty good acquisition, right? Okay. So you want to give him some credit. But overall, he has not earned your trust. I get it. You feel like, and I'm paraphrasing here, and I'm trying to think like fans. You feel like he didn't get as much as he should have for these guys. Many people think Paredes is the best, one of the better prospects in the Cubs organization, better than where his ranking is, which was 9th in Chicago for the Cubs and their prospect list, and now he's 8th in Detroit. Remember, he's 18. He's playing Class A ball. We don't know that yet. Now, Matt Manning is Class A ball too, and he's number 1 for Detroit, and he's in the top 90 of Major League Baseball, even higher than that. So you're thinking you didn't get enough. Well, this Paredes kid turns out to be as good as many people think he will be. He might be a jewel of this deal. And if you think about it, the Cubs are probably only getting Justin Wilson beyond this year. Unless they want to reach out and keep Alex Avila, and many people think, oh, he'll automatically come back to Detroit. I don't know if that's necessarily true. John Hicks will come up. He'll have a nice platoon with James McCann. McCann hits lefties exceptionally well, and Hicks hits righties exceptionally well. So it'd be a nice little tag team combination. Maybe both of them are just situational guys. Maybe they're platoon players. Until James McCann can really do a better job of learning to hit right-handed hitters, maybe this is what we're going to be forced to deal with. Have to platoon these guys. That's okay. If you're getting really high production from that position, that's okay. Hicks isn't as good defensively as McCann. McCann probably not as good offensively as Hicks. Okay, you can deal with that. But maybe that's what Paredes is. Maybe he comes in and he becomes a much bigger piece to the Tigers' overall puzzle than we know. Folks, we don't know him. You don't. We can read about him. We can hear what scouts have to say about him. But overall, you don't know him. Because right now in South Bend, single A, in the Midwestern League, he's batting .264. He's got a little bit of pop. Here's what the scouting report is on him. More pop than the other teenaged infield prospects from the Cubs system. Less likely to stay up the middle long term. He has enough loft and bat speed from the right side of the plate to develop into a 15-homer threat. He also had a good feel for hitting, already showing the ability to control the strike zone and use the whole field. He has enough arm strength to play anywhere in the infield, but his fringy speed and quickness limit his range. He could shift to second base, but more scouts think he's destined for third base because he figures to lose a step as he fills out. Right now, he's 5'11", $175. So that's what you're looking at with Paredes, or however you say his name. Now, the thing about it is, so here's what you've gotten in return. You've got a 23-year-old, you got an 18-year-old, you got a 22-year-old in Dewalt Lugo, who many people feel like they're a little upset because you didn't get as much as you wanted for J.D. Martinez. And there's another thing about your lack of trust for Avila. You feel like you could have gotten more for J.D. Martinez. I would remind you again, and I've done this before, bad defensive player, 2-month rental, going to want over $20 million in the offseason, and there's not a huge market for corner outfielders. That's why you didn't bring a ton in for J.D. Martinez. People were complaining last night on social media, you should have waited longer, could have gotten a better deal. Says who? How do we know that? The reason general managers make deals that far in advance of the trade deadline is because they know the phone calls that have been coming their way and what they've been offered. And they don't like the trend, right? Unfortunately, we don't know enough about these guys. So when you look at Lugo, and by the way, he's off to a bad start at Erie. He's only batted about 200. Many people feel like he's more of a utility guy. And you don't like that, and I don't like it. I don't like getting rid of J.D. Martinez for a utility guy. Now, they think a little bit higher of King, who's still playing A-ball. Okay, so it might be one of those Paredes situations. Isaac Paredes, 18. Jose King, 18. Those guys might be one of those 3-4 year down the line type of guys. See, in baseball, the beauty of the trade deadline is, the anticipation, right? The frustration of the trade deadline is that when your team actually does sell or buy, if you're buyers, you're looking at like, man, I can't believe we gave up that much for that guy, even though you haven't seen those young guys play. You've just read about them. If you're the sellers, I can't believe I didn't get more for this established guy. That's often how it works. So you think, we could have gotten a lot more from Candelaria. Well, sure, folks, maybe you could have. Maybe. If Washington was out there offering Victor Robles, yeah, I would have much rather have seen that type of haul back, wouldn't you? For sure. And Victor Robles, in case people don't, he's an outfielder for the Washington Nationals who's 20 years old and viewed as the 5th best prospect in the major leagues. He's playing Double-A. By the way, in Double-A, he's batting .231. Just so you know. He's batting .231 at the AA level. And overall, his scouting grade, power, run, arm, they break it down to hit, power, run, arm, and field. All right? He's got a 60. That means he's major league ready. But I just want you to know, at the AA level, that dude's batting .231. Okay? How much is enough? Let's put it in perspective. Yoan Moncada, he's the number 1 rated prospect in all of baseball. He's with the Chicago White Sox. Okay? He's batting .280 at AAA. 280. Now, he's going to have more. He's got 12 home runs, and he's got 36 RBIs. 6'2", 205. All right? He's batting .280. I want you to think about that for a minute. 12 home runs, and that number of runs driven in. Now, when you look at what Detroit just got, and maybe this is an unfair comparison, but I'm just letting you know, Candelario, he's 23, a year older. He's batting .266, but he's got as many home runs and more RBIs at AAA. They play at the same level, for what that's worth. So you look at it, and people go, I don't like the haul they got for J.D. Martinez. It's too much down the road. I don't like the haul they got for Alex Avila and Justin Wilson. Those who complain about the Justin Wilson thing, I think, have more leverage and more of a beef. And the reason is because Justin Wilson didn't have to be traded, quote unquote. You could have waited even through the year, through the trade deadline. You could have waited till the offseason if you wanted. You could have waited till the trade deadline next year. No saying that Justin Wilson would have the same type of year, but you understand the point. He was under team control. He was affordable. It wasn't a big deal that you had to get rid of Justin Wilson. And quite honestly, think about what this team has lacked, what this organization has lacked for years. A pretty reliable closer. And he's been reliable for the most part. The difference is they now bring up Joe Jimenez to be, well, he won't be that just yet. And Joe Jimenez, you and I love Joe Jimenez, right? That's all you talked about when I had my radio show. Shep, why don't they just bring this guy up? Well, if you look at the scouting grades and for pitchers, they go by fastball, slider, changeup, and control. All right? His overall grade's a 50. There's nothing special about that. It's a grade of 50. Big deal. He's not going to be the closer right away. Who is? I have no idea. I really don't. Because Bruce Rondon has fallen on his face, and he has absolutely sucked in the last few outings. Alex Wilson has struggled mightily since the All-Star break. Drew Verhagen isn't going to be that guy. Maybe they give it to Joe Jimenez. Maybe they see what he can do in a high-leverage situation. He's got an electric fastball. From a scouting standpoint, that is all-star stuff. He's got a good slider, but his changeup isn't very good, and overall, he's just a guy. Folks, we continue, for right now, we continue to overrate our prospects. We do. We think so much, so highly of not just our guys, but also our major leaguers. I mean, Alex Avila's struggled mightily as of late. Would you agree with that? You've seen him play. I think he's had a really nice year. I argued before, this is a guy who I think could have been an all-star. I do. I think he's a guy who, when you look at it, at the all-star break, where he was, he deserved to be considered. You want to take Justin Upton and Michael Fulmer? I got no problem with that. None whatsoever. But deep down inside, there was a time you're looking at Alex Avila and you're going, man, this guy's so much better than I ever thought he was going to be. Well, guess what? Alex Avila has come back down to earth a little bit. As much as I like him, since the All-Star break, he's batted at $125. Prior to the All-Star break, he was batting .300. He's struggled mightily since the All-Star break. So what were you going to get for him? If it continues to slip, what were you going to get for him? And he's just a rental. So basically, I look at it this way. Justin Wilson for the two Cubs prospects. I like Justin Wilson. I would have preferred to hold on to him unless you get a type of offer that you just can't refuse. Now, maybe that's what it was for Avila. Maybe he thought deep down inside, you know what? This is as good as it's going to get for us because I don't see us getting anybody else like the Dodgers and their prospects, for example. And maybe for the Cubs. And maybe he was willing to say, hey, listen, I want Oscar De La Cruz or Jose Albertos. Those two guys are what is now left of their prospect list, their top two. And they were both rated rated above Paredes before the deal. I heard the name Mark Zagunis. Zagunis is an outfielder for the Cubs. He's playing in AAA. He looks to be a very good player, but he's not highly rated per se. So you look at Avila and you think, you're going to have to do more, or I'm going to have to see more in order for you to regain my trust. I completely understand that, folks. I really do. I would just remind you, before you start tweeting, before you start talking, before you start blogging, or before you start even listening to people who say, I know, how many people have really seen them? I was just down at AA in Erie, and I was talking to a ton of people who have seen these prospects. And I'm talking about Erie prospects and Toledo prospects. And to a man, they have said, that Toledo team's got nothing. And they don't. And the Tigers aren't making deals to improve Toledo. Tigers are making deals to improve themselves. You know it, I know it. That's the way it should be. But there's no help. There's no near future help at Toledo. You want to look at Detroit's pipeline. You want to look at where Detroit is really hoping to get the future prospects that are going to help them contend in the division. It's AA Erie and it's single A Lakeland. Because Lakeland's the high A. It goes West Michigan, Lakeland, Erie, Toledo, Detroit. All right? That's where you're looking. That's where you're hoping. My hope is that Candelario gets a call up in September, that he settles in Toledo, does a good job there, and he's drawn some walks, and he's got some decent power. He's got 27 doubles, man, okay? 12 bombs, 52 RBIs, batting almost 270, settles in nicely there, gets a call up in September, and gets an opportunity to play with the Tigers for a little bit. Then in training camp next year, spring training next year, he's going to contend to make this team. And if they like what they see, who knows? Maybe even before that. Maybe there's a team out there that says, yeah, I'll take Jose Iglesias. You see, Ian Kinsler is $10 million next year, which isn't super expensive. But you could buy him out for $5 million. Maybe you could trade him in the offseason. I don't see a lot of, quite honestly, I don't see a ton of market for a guy who is batting, 245 right now, is 35, going to be 36. But he's turned into a much better leader than before. What happens with Justin Upton? Is he going to opt out? I don't know, because Justin Upton has had a hell of a season, and he's going to make a ton of money for Detroit. But he is only 29, and maybe if he wants to win, he feels like, you know what, now's the time that I got to go. That's possible. Next year, if you think about it, you look at this team. Let's say Upton comes back. Upton in left. Matuk and somebody else in center. Maybe it's Jacoby Jones. Maybe it's Alex Presley. I'm not sure. It doesn't make us feel really comfortable. Although Mikey Matuk this year's batting .292. He's done a pretty nice job, don't you think? Upton's played really well in left field. You could argue he's a Gold Glove left fielder. I know you don't believe that a lot of times because you've seen some of the egregious mistakes he's made, but you look at his defensive numbers, they're really good, all right? Matuk and maybe somebody else in center. I mean, if I hit .292, if that's the way it goes, and we still have 2 full months left for Mikey Matuk to come back down to earth, I suppose, but if I hit .292, I would expect to have an opportunity next year to compete, wouldn't you? Absolutely. And then you've got right field open because there's nobody in right field right now. And that's why, Christian Stewart, it would be great for him to just take off and just take everything by storm so you could move a guy like that into a possible position like that. So you've got 1.5 outfield positions open if Upton comes back. If not, it's Katie Bar at the door. Everything's wide open. Third base, maybe it's Castellanos. Maybe it's Iglesias if you don't move him. Maybe it's Kinsler unless you buy him out and you put Dixon Machado there, because Dixon Machado, quite honestly, has been a hell of a lot better than I thought he was going to be. I give him a ton of credit. That's a really difficult thing to do, and yet he's batting .313. Now, maybe he's batting .313 because he's only played 41 games. Maybe he's batting .313 because he's only got 83 at-bats. But considering what he has to do, try to be ready every day, and really he's only playing once a week, that is really difficult. I'd like to see more of him. And then you got Miguel Cabrera first. You get McCann and Hicks behind the dish. Your pitching staff ain't changing a whole lot. Fulmer, Verlander, Zimmerman, Norris, Boyd. There you go. There's your 5 guys. Unless Faedo does something that we didn't expect. Unless Bo Burrows gets called up in September and he gets a strong look, because that dude's got some electric stuff, man. He's got to work on a few things, but overall, Bo Burrows, we haven't seen Matt Manning. I haven't seen Matt Manning. I've seen Bo Burrows. You want to see this kid pitch? You talk about an electric fastball? He's got an electric fastball. He's got an above-average curveball. He's got to work on his changeup and his slider. But overall, he's not far away, man. He's got good stuff. And he's been really good at Erie. People like him a lot. So you get it. I doubt one of those guys make that jump, but if they do, and if they don't, you still have Manning, Faedo, Burrows, Funkhauser. Those are 4 pretty good, talented young pitchers in your system. And I didn't really talk about Tyler Alexander. He's a lefty. He doesn't have great stuff. This is a kid who's pitching at Erie right now. I went down there and I watched him start. He's just an average guy. He's a back-end rotation type of guy. He's more of a command guy. I was going to say he's a crafty lefty, but I know people don't like that, and I understand it. So that's what you're looking at. That's what you're looking at for this team next year, unless one of these young players can come up and do something. And I think deep down inside, that's where you and I have the biggest problem with the Tigers' moves. You don't see anybody who fills the void quickly, right? You don't see anybody who says, I'm ready to assume control. Chris Bryant in Chicago, Anthony Rizzo in Chicago, right? Bryce Harper in Washington, Manny Machado in Baltimore. Everybody saw those guys and said, yes, those guys, they're going to be there for a long time. They're ready to assume duty now. You don't have that right now. You didn't get that in return. It requires what? Patience and belief. And you have very little of it. And so do I. We lack the patience because we haven't had a championship here since 1984. You lack the belief because of some of the previous major league free agent signings Avila has made. It's a tough combination to combat if you're the Detroit Tigers right now. Shep Shower and Shave is brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Folks, HVAC is all they teach. So they've perfected their hands-on program for the last 38 years. Try this. Call some of the big HVAC companies in the area. Ask them where you should go. It's going to be unanimous. Northwestern Tech, the HVAC school. Call them today, 248-358-4006, or go to their website, northwesterntech.edu. We're also brought to you by our friends at Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak, known for its unrivaled weekend nightclub experience in their spacious second floor, which is available for private parties. They've also got a one-of-a-kind sportsbook viewing area. No better place in Detroit to feel the excitement as you watch the Tigers, the Wings, the Lions, Pistons, Michigan, or Michigan State. Fifth Avenue in Royal Oak with a kitchen that's open until 2 a.m. daily. And we're brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs. Nate is the artist of our logo, Shep Shower and Shave. Find his work on Instagram or on Facebook.